Welcome to Connect Geek. So hello humans and welcome to the planet Earth and welcome to Connect Geek Tech Tips. We are going to talk today about computers and my suggestions on what I think you should purchase if you want to buy a new computer. That's both Mac and PC, but I'm more of a PC guy. I do have a Mac. What I'm streaming to you right now is a Mac. And I typically use my Mac to do all of the streaming because I use a program called Ecamm. And Ecamm allows me to do the timer, which is still stuck on the screen. Oh my goodness, I'm going to make that go away. It's gone. Poof, just like that. Because there's a little thing called an overlay. And that overlay allows me to put things on it. For example, just because I know this is not part of the topic, if I do the little turn it back on, turn it back off. I also could turn on my name. Look at that. My name is on the screen. And it tells you that I'm Larry Miller and I'm from Connect Geek. So welcome to my show. And we do this show every night, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. No, it's not 10 a.m. It's 10 p.m. This week on Connect Geek Tech Tips, we're going to talk about today is computers and my suggestions for them. Typically newer ones. You can always buy a refurbished one, but typically new. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about Mac versus PC. We're still going to talk about Mac and PC today, but we are going to talk about them in more depth tomorrow and which one is better for specific types of applications, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. On Wednesday, we're going to talk about antivirus and what is antivirus, which one we suggest, which one we think is best out there. So keep that in mind. And on Thursday, you surf the internet every single day with Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, Firefox, Microsoft Edge, or Opera, any one of those 5 different browsers. Well, let's talk about those in depth and figure out which one works best for us. And then Friday, we'll do a recap and maybe just have an open discussion about technology. If anybody has any questions, please come back Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll talk about that. So let's get right into the show. We are going to talk about technology, and I'm going to bring up the PowerPoints, and let's do that. Let's see if we can get into it. So the first slide is Connect Geek. That's me. And I'm going to, this is episode number 7. Yes, I've done 7 episodes. First 5 last week. Saturday was a interview with Sean Fair. Go back and my videos and you can see that. As I mentioned in the beginning, welcome humans. We are here. To find me, you can go to Connect Geek or connectgeek.net. That's where I live. I'm on the internet all over the place. Look for Connect Geek. That's where I am. Today, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about new computers, and then later in the week, we're going to talk about the other topics I just mentioned. So let's just jump right into it. Computers, new suggestions. Now, I'm going to try something really cool, so let's see if this works, guys. We're going to do, look at that, there I am. Hey, how you guys? And, oh, no, over there, right there, are my topics. Pretty neat, huh? Topics, there they are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. That's great that we can see them. Now let's talk about them. First one is, the most important. Stop. First things first. You got to buy a computer, right? What do you got to do when you buy a computer? Well, you have to decide what is it used for. And ideally, you got to set a realistic budget. What I always tell everybody that ever asks me a computer, what kind of computer should I buy? Well, I say that you should buy a computer that the most that you can afford, and then buy one step higher. Because what that means is that you're going to buy a computer that's going to last you a long, long time. Most computers that I've found, most people keep them from 5 to 10 years. So one computer that you buy is on its last leg is probably at least 7 to 8 years old. If you buy a computer today and it's let's say it's $1,000. If you buy one for $1,200 or $1,300, hypothetically, just using those numbers, those are the numbers I'm suggesting that you buy it at, that $1,300 computer will probably last you a little bit longer. As the next topic mentions is processor. There are 3 different processors that I recommend. There's really 4 that are out there, but 3 of them are recommended by me. There's an Intel i7, Intel i5, and Intel i3. All 3 of those are great processors for usage from anywhere from a young child to a person that wants to do gaming or video editing or picture editing. Each one of those is kind of gauged based upon the person and their usage. There's a 4th one that's an AMD processor. I don't always recommend that, but the AMD processor typically is the most inexpensive processor when you're going to buy a computer. I always recommend buying the most you can afford, i.e. the i7, because what's that going to do? It's going to last you probably a good 10 years. I know it's hard to believe a computer lasting 10 years, but if you look back at some of your receipts of computers that you bought, that's probably anywhere from 5 to 10 years old. And those computers, they're probably chugging along. You probably upgraded it from Windows 7 to Windows 8 to Windows 10. And you say, oh man, why is it so slow? Well, one, it's probably because your computer has an old hard drive and it's just still spinning. You maybe not have enough RAM or memory in your computer. With all those factors coming into play, your computer gets slower and slower based upon the type of applications and operating system, i.e. Windows 10, you put onto those computers. Now, obviously, I'm talking about Windows-based computers. Mac has a little bit of different aspect to them. They still have the processors and they still have the same type of processors, but they tend to not have like different iterations as much as Windows does, as defining Windows moments. Like Mac, there's a Safari and Lion and all those types of defining names of their operating versions. Windows just gives it a number. What you can have to consider is Macs tend to build their computers to last even longer than the average Windows computer because they're much more reliable, more sturdy. They don't get viruses as much. They tend to have a durability that Windows computers seem to be more disposable. But the whole world typically leans towards a Windows-based society. They're more interconnected. They have a better format to allow you to communicate better with inside of a corporate environment. And Windows seems to lend itself to that. But let's go back to your computer. Your computer has a processor, and you need to consider RAM. So I told you what the processors I recommend is i3, i5, and i7. And then next is the RAM. I always, it's just like buying the computer, buy the most you can afford, and then buy a little bit more. So if, let's say, the computer comes with 4 gigabytes of RAM, buy 8. If it comes with 8, buy 16. That way you can grow your applications and your computer usage to those parameters that one day you might not think that you need them now, but you will in 5 years. I can guarantee it. So when computers first came out, there was a standard, what they call the hard drive. That's where it's like a little box that's about double the size of a couple decks of cards. There's about 2 inches, about an inch thick, and about 3 1/4 inches edge to edge wide. And that big hard drive, as they would call it, it had a spinning platters on the inside of it. Those spinning platters was where all your data was stored. That data is always being written and received from those platters all the time, and it's always moving. And there's a little bar inside of it going back and forth all the time. And the longer you keep your computer running, the longer you keep writing to data, it's always moving. So one of the other things I say is you're as fast as your slowest link. You're as fast as your slowest link. What that means is your computer will only go as fast as the slowest piece in it. So if your hard drive is the slowest thing and it's always moving, that's your slowest link. Well, today there's a new, and it's not really more of a trend anymore, but it's called a solid state drive, or an SSD. This solid state drive is basically kind of like your phone or your like a USB flash drive. It writes instantly and receives instantly. So when you're writing data or receiving data from your SSD hard drive, it's so much more fast. And when you buy a computer, I strongly suggest, if you can afford to do so, don't buy a hard drive or HD. Buy an SSD, solid state drive. And that will give you the opportunity to even grow further in your computer. So I know we're talking about new computers, but if you want to kind of rejuvenate your current computer, work with somebody, i.e. me, and I will take your data from your old hard drive, your spinning hard drive, and put it onto your new solid state drive. And you will see a significant improvement in overall performance, just your computer will be having a new 2 or 3 years possibly worth of life, as long as it's not dropped or spill water on it, which happens all the time. All right, now I've talked about processor, RAM, and hard drive. Now the third thing I consider is graphics. Now graphics are only come into play when, let's say you're buying a computer for your kid and they want to do some gaming or some high-end graphics gaming where they're playing a lot of movement games, or a lot of kids nowadays play a game called Call of Duty, or was it Fortnite, where they're running around, jumping and killing everybody, because that's what the games do. They love this game. It's called Fortnite. And Fortnite takes up a lot of processor, a lot of RAM, a lot of hard drive, and a lot of graphic. And if you don't have the right graphic card inside of your computer, it won't run as well as you would hope it to. The best solution to do that is, there's like NVIDIA, and there's about 10 other really high-end graphics cards. Just need to do some research. And if you need help with that kind of research, give me a call and I'll let you know. So this moves us into this computer software. As I mentioned just a moment ago about the graphics card, it plays right into what your gaming is doing, what your word processing is doing, what your video editing. If you're doing any of those pieces, it plays a factor in the computer that you buy. I've done this for 25 years, and I know all of the nuances of buying a new computer. Everything from an HP to a Dell and I'll talk about that in the next slide. Basically, all of those things come into play when you want to buy a brand new computer. Antivirus software. Now, in my opinion, you shouldn't buy a store brand or an antivirus that is free initially. An example of that is a company called Micro Center. They like to sell you their brand, I think it's ESET, antivirus. I'm sure it's a great product. I'm sure it does what it's supposed to do, but personally, it doesn't give me the satisfaction of trying to troubleshoot antivirus. There's another one called McAfee, and another one called AVG and Avast. All of those they're good antivirus for what they are. They're basically free. and you get what you pay for. When you get free, you're going to get pop-ups. You're going to get things saying this isn't, you're not protected. It's just going to annoy you. And why do you want something to annoy you? You don't. I don't. So if one of my customers say, I don't want to pay for antivirus. Okay, well, I'll give you this free one, but keep in mind you're only going to be getting what you pay for, which is nothing. And periodically you're going to get a pop-up saying you should buy this. You should buy this software for one, and number two, you should be doing, there's another product that we offer, buy this one. And it kind of tricks you into buying their software as well as buying their additional products. I recommend personally a product called WebRoot, and we're going to talk about all this on Wednesday. Talk about all this on Wednesday and about which ones I recommend and the deep nuances of each one. So at the end of the day, you need to consider what your computer can do with your life, because it is your lifeline. It is your connection to the world. And because it connects to the internet, obviously it needs to have Wi-Fi, and I always recommend getting, there's a thing called an Ethernet port, and that Ethernet port plugs into the computers, especially if you're going to do any type of gaming or video streaming like I'm doing through my computer. If you're doing any type of editing of any sort at large scale where the computer is processing a lot of things, it's important to keep that in mind when you're looking at a new computer. Now let's go to the next slide, and the next slide says, here are a lot of name brands that are out in the market. These are just the first 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 6 or 7, 8 that I recommend, as well as what people are buying in the market. These are just alphabetical. Each person has their own opinion about the particular products that they like. Acer is really great for some gaming. Apple, obviously, they have really good stable computers that seem to last a long time. But as it says, Apple computers usually cost more than similarly configured Windows-based computers. Well, yes, they are. And there's a learning curve if you've used a Windows-based computer for most of your computing career. It's important to note that if you do move or migrate to an Apple computer, there is going to be a bit of a learning curve that you need to work through, and sometimes it's more trouble than it's worth. Asus has a really good gaming system computers that tend to be in a lot of people use Asus as their computer to build on their own. They want to build their own computer, they use an Asus, or they use an Acer. Or Micro Center, as I mentioned before, you can build your own type of computer, and that seems to be what a lot of the gamers do. One of the computers that's not listed on here, and it's a great computer, and it's probably something that you might want to consider if you do want to do some video editing, if you have like two or three cameras and you want to do like a show like I'm doing. You definitely need to get 2 or 3 cameras plugged into this one computer, but it's called Alienware, and they have one of the highest processor gigahertz. And I'm not going to get into the hertz of i7. That's just too techie, and I don't want to get too techie on you, but that type of processor on a Alienware computer tends to be one of the better computers for high-end performance gaming, editing, streaming video, that kind of thing. Now, when it comes down to computers that I prefer, Dell is one of them, as well as the HP. I have both, and they both seem to work really well for me, but I've had better luck with the HP than the Dell. Now, both of them I would always recommend to whomever wants to buy one. They're always good serviceable computers. What I mean by that is, if I'm not available, or somebody like me is not available, you can always call HP or Dell, and they seem to have a really good tech support. When you're having a tech support issue with your computer, it's not starting up properly, it's not shutting down properly, it's having problem. You're getting a message on the screen when it's called the blue screen of death. Yes, that's a legitimate name, and you probably have seen it in your lifetime at least once, where the screen turns blue on a Windows computer and you get white letters. Those white letters give you all kinds of information that tells you there's something wrong with the computer. Either it's bad memory in the computer, bad hard drive, whatever, or bad operating system. Bad Windows may be corrupted. All of those things have they don't have infinite life. They have a definitive life, and so computers break. They're just like any other machine. They happen, and so the blue screen typically indicates that there's something else wrong with the computer, and that's when you need to call someone like me to come in and diagnose it and let you know if you need to get a new computer, if we can replace a part, that type of thing. The other one is a Google Chromebook. Now, what a Google Chromebook is, it's basically just a shell of a computer. It's back in when computers first came out in the world, there was called a green screen computer, and it was connected to it's been called a mainframe. Well, that mainframe mentality has now become what we call the cloud. Mainframes are now where your Google Chromebook connects through the internet to a data center where Google holds all of your data. It doesn't hold very much information locally on the computer. It's all client, which is your client means your workstation, and server, which is where your cloud is, where all your data is being stored. So the client server mentality is a Google Chromebook, and all of that information is stored. As long as you're connected to the internet, you'll have access to that data. And it's important to note that when you're not on the internet, you are basically don't have any data to deal with. So you always need to be connected with this Chromebook, which is basically a dummy box with nothing to do because it can't connect to anything. There's very, very limited usage you can do on a Chromebook offline when it's not connected to the internet, but it's not really usable in my opinion. Lenovo is what IBM used to. IBM computers changed their brand to Lenovo, and they're a great product. They're really durable and sturdy. A lot of big corporations like Lenovo because it tends to have the IBM backing. I find that their hardware is cumbersome to work on. I like Dell and HP because if I need to replace a piece or a part, I just turn the laptop or desktop inside out or upside down and take a couple screws out, and boom, all that information is easy to fix or replace or work through. Lenovo doesn't seem to have that mindset yet, unless they've changed recently, but personally I don't care for it. Microsoft has what they call a Surface Pro. They have many iterations of that, and it's basically kind of like a Chromebook, but it has a Windows operating system on it, and so it's a touch screen and you can do all things. I think it's a powerful machine to do a lot of field work and or in a warehouse and you need to have access to specific things where you need portability. The Microsoft Surface Pro seems to handle that quite nicely. There are all types of computers out there, ranging from a full desktop, which is a big tower where you can push the button on it. It sits on the floor by your desk, or there's other types of all-in-one desktops where you can touch the screen and all you have is a mouse and a keyboard. Don't even have any peripherals whatsoever other than those three devices. We talked about gaming computers. Now laptops, they typically range from like the smaller of like maybe 10 inches up to like an 18-inch full screen. And some of the keyboards on those particular devices have like a 10 key keypad on the keyboard. Some don't. Depends on like your preference. Computers, when it comes down to it, is all about preference. And if you prefer something small and compact, like a MacBook Air, which is really tiny, only like a couple inches thick, and it's light, and you can throw it in your bag and just zoom away. And the nice thing about Macs is, in that respect, they typically have a really good battery life. You plug it in before you go to bed, and it lasts for a whole day. I mean, that's a beautiful thing about a Mac. They have really good battery life. Another plus with a Mac is just, it's just so portable, and you can do whatever you want. And they have the range of like from 10 to 18 as well. You might want to consider what works best for you, and if those Macs seem to fall into your just word processing and basic computer needs of your day, like an office where you don't need any major processing power when it comes to like editing or gaming or whatever, that might be a great work computer. Now, let's say you do a lot of accounting or something, you need a 10 keypad, and the Mac doesn't work well in your corporate environment. You get a Windows PC with a 10 keypad, maybe on a 14 or an 18-inch screen, because it's the larger size tends to lend itself to be more of a portable desktop type of machine versus getting a full-fledged desktop with a monitor and a keyboard and all the peripherals that go along with it. If you really need to be portable, but you need to have the power of some sort of accounting package, or you need a specific editing software, and you need to be portable. Let's say you do video editing, and you need to have a computer with a i7, which I mentioned earlier in the program, where it needs to be processing power intensive when you edit video, there's a process in there called rendering. That rendering eats up a lot of processing power, and that processing power it needs to have at least an i7 processor. I do video editing, so that's why I'm bringing that topic up more and more. But there's a gambit of things that you can talk about and do with a computer. You just need to define what works best for you and what helps you succeed in the tasks that you're needing. Computers have changed the world. The internet has changed the world. So we need to find the computer that matches our needs to fit into that world. Anyway, I think I'm close to the end here. Uh-oh, my screen. I don't like when it does that. Let's see if I can go back to my screen properly. There it goes. All right, let's see. So I have talked a lot about computers, and I've talked about what they can do. There's tablets, there's detachables, as they would call them. There's all types of different nuances of what computer, all things you can connect to a computer. Just for an example, this computer that I'm working on right now has this camera that I'm talking to you plugged directly into it through a little device, and then I'm using the internet to communicate to the world with it. I just want to show you, just to give you an example. Let's go back over here. Let's see, I want to do, sorry guys, I want to show overlays. It's not showing me what I want. Well, that's just silly. I was going to show you a different, oh yeah, I can do it this way. All right. So I have that camera connected to this computer. I have this camera connected as well. I have this camera connected as well. I don't use them that much, but I have them just so I can, just in case I wanted to show somebody something up close. I just wanted to give you an example of what you can do with this particular environment. What you can't see down here, I have a mixer, and this mixer is connected to the camera and to this microphone, and all of it's fed through this is the power of what computers can do. And not saying that you guys would want to do something to this level, but I can show you how to do that. I can show you how to get your computer connected to the internet and display your image out of Facebook Live, YouTube, wherever you want to go. And guess what? You can do your own web show too. So that's all I have for tonight. If you guys have any questions, any comments, please say so in the comments below. I will put some links in the show notes about some of the topics we went over today. And if you're watching this after the live show, I suggest that you reach out to me, and if you have any questions about what you've learned today. Also, you can go to my website at connectedgeek.net and reach out to me, and I can a list of my offerings. I do IT services, from helping you with your Wi-Fi needs all the way down to your computer and replacing the hard drive, as we mentioned earlier. I also build websites. I do social media. So if you need any of those types of services, I'm up for that kind of thing too. So if you guys have any other comments or questions, my name is Larry Miller. I'm with Connected Geek, keeping the world connected one geek at a time. And thanks for your attention, and I'll talk to you tomorrow night when we talk about Mac versus PC. So be excellent to each other, and have a great night.